In today's episode, we will be talking about UFC 308. Go over how 307 went, but mostly talking about 307, giving my betting analysis for each fight, what I'll be taking, and what we'll put on the official DubCast card. So, with that being said, let's jump right into UFC 308. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the DubCast. So before we jump into UFC 308, let's quickly recap UFC 307. So, unfortunately, the DubCast card is now in the red. We went 1-3 on picks, dropping us to 13-15 overall. So let's talk about those picks and on the prelims first. So Carla Esparza, retirement fight. Was not watching this fight live, but she was robbed by a decision. Haven't watched it fight. Still haven't watched it, but I have it on good authority that she was robbed. Joe Rogan cried for her when she retired. So Esparza, you blew it. That was a tough one to start the night. Quick L there. I did tell you guys Court McGee though, so there you go. That wasn't an official pick, but I said I was probably gonna bet on him. Quick sub of Tim Means. Anyways, so I had the distance parlay with the women's fight. They go the distance. No, this was a different parlay. So first parlay we had Esparza and Pennington to go the distance, and that hit. And then we had Holland and Delize to go the distance. That did not hit because Holland rib went out in the first round, so that was a loss. The only thing we did hit was the Harrison Vieira over rounds and the Pena Pennington over rounds. Both of them went the distance, so cash that pick. That was our one win. Last one. This is the most devastating fight I've ever watched in my life. Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista. Bautista just holds him up against the cage for 5 minutes, wins the fight. That was bullshit. If Aldo was let loose, he would have wrecked the world. We all hate Mario Bautista. I don't need to go into it, but that was our last loss. So kind of an asterisk if you ask me, but our record is 13-15 officially. So other main event notes, Pereira, just an insane, crazy fight. Shout out Khalil Roundtree. That was an absurd performance by both. Definitely saved the card. It was going to be pretty boring. Speaking of boring, Pennington Pena was pretty boring. A snooze fest. I stopped watching UFC and turned on college football, and that was on. And then went back once Pereira was out. Pretty bad judging as well. I thought Pennington won that fight. I was kind of paying attention in and out. So I don't know. The judges were all over the place in that card. Bautista, fuck you. Harrison Vieira was mostly boring as well. I'm not really looking forward to the Harrison Pena fight, but I guess we'll see what happens. I do feel a little bit bad for Kevin Holland. I'm not the biggest Kevin Holland fan, but I'm sure we'll see him in like 3 months again to fight. So that'll wrap up UFC 307 recap. What'd you guys think of that card? I thought it was pretty mid, to be honest, but besides the main card, well, I won't only really watch the main cards of the last 5 fights. The Pereira fight kind of saved everything, so that's where I was at with that. But other than that, I thought it was another pretty mid card. So we need some really exciting fights in Abu Dhabi, which I think we will be getting. So that should be exciting. So UFC 308, let's move on to now. As I mentioned before, it's in Abu Dhabi, so Dana White loves to do a lot for the oil people over there. So he's putting on a show in Abu Dhabi for UFC 308. I feel like this is a pretty genuinely stacked card. Starts very early. PSA for everyone. I think the prelims are at like 8. Early prelims might be around like 8 a.m. because the main card starts at 2. I'm looking forward to this one a lot. Helps fighters from that area, maybe Abu Dhabi around that area, to have the home crowd in their advantage, but I'm not sure that matters too much. So with that being said, let's dive right into it. So this card has already changed a bunch. Khabib's cousin's out of the picture, Saeed Nurmagomedov. He's not fighting anymore. We had a sub facing against Rinat Fakhrav. Carlos Leal steps in, so hopefully everything changes. I waited to film this before everything was set in stone because I did all my research on Sunday, and now we're here on Wednesday filming this, so hopefully everything stays the same before Saturday. Hopefully Chimaev doesn't pull out, but we'll see what happens. So starting it out with the prelims, I don't know if we have early prelims or it's just a very extended prelim, so I'm just going to say prelims for all of these. So prelims, the first fight of the night, according to the UFC website, is Rinat Fakhrav. He is minus 260 on the money line. He faces off against Carlos Leal, who is plus 210 on the money line. So, as always, if you're new to the channel, I'll go through each fighter, give kind of their UFC background, how they win, how they lose, and then give my analysis based off that. If I've watched them fight, I may comment on that as well. But we're still learning here. I've started doing this. All these channels are started doing all these predictions videos at UFC301, so I do have a good marker to keep it. But this is only our 8th video: 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, 307, 3. Yeah, this is our 8th UFC podcast. So we're learning a little bit. I know some of these guys who have fought before. I do try and watch the fight nights, but if I mess something up, excuse me. So here we go. So Rinat Fakhretdinov. He has 5 UFC fights. He has notably beat Brian Battle, who we saw in UFC Paris pull off a great performance. He's a good UFC fighter. Kevin Lee, Elizu Zaleski dos Santos, and he is 4-0-1 in his 5 UFC fights. So pretty strong performances so far out of Rinat in the UFC. In his career, he's got 10 knockout wins, 7 submissions, and 5 decision wins. 4 of his UFC fights have gone to decision, so that's something I'm keeping an eye on. The only loss in his career was via decision 13 years ago, so he's looking pretty good heading into this one. Only one loss, and it was in 2011, before 2012. I don't know. So his opponent, stepping on short notice, entering the UFC for the first time, is Carlos Leal. He is plus 210 currently on the money line. So this is his first fight in the UFC. He's coming in on 5 days' notice. This was announced on Tuesday that he would be stepping in. He has a 21-5 career record. 10 of his 21 wins have come via knockout, 2 submission wins, 9 decision wins. 4 of his last 5 fights have ended in KO. Granted, that was in a previous promotion, so not sure how much to put on that. When he's lost, it's been 80% decision losses. He only has 1 submission loss. So 4 decision losses, 1 submission loss, I believe. So the picks here, I like Rinat in this fight. The one he had before this, I really liked him, but in this one I still like him. Leal is a little unknown to me due to it being his first fight in the UFC, but I usually like to fade those guys. Rinat has been pretty legit in the UFC so far, beating Battle, Kevin Lee, Zaleski dos Santos. Like, those are no fucking snooze fests. Those are pretty good fighters. So I think he's definitely, rightfully so, the favorite. It's hard to actually tell what Leal has when he steps into the UFC octagon. Could he be really good? Could he be shit? Maybe. I don't know. I'm hoping that Rinat is going to pull it out, but I mean, really, Carlos Leal is kind of a question mark. I do like this fight to go the distance, though. Leal, as his first UFC fight, when people from other promotions enter the UFC, it kind of, things slow down a little bit. It's not just instant knockouts, unless you're insane. But, I mean, I always pull up the example of Michael Venom Page. He came in and fought Holland, and then it was very slowed down, after being a knockout artist in whatever promotion he was in before. So Leal will definitely have to adjust, and Rinat has 80% decisions in the UFC, so I think it's a slow, grinded out win for Rinat. So with that being said, things I'm considering betting on are Rinat moneyline and fight to go the distance. Moving down the card, we have our second fight between Ismail Nardiev. He is minus 170 on the money line. He faces off against Bruno Silva, who is plus 140 on the money line. So a little bit about Nardiev. He was in the UFC from 2019 to 2020. In that time, he was 2-2. He did lose to Sean Brady. Pretty notable fight now that Sean Brady's pretty high up in the rankings for welterweight. I believe Sean Brady's only lost to Bilal Muhammad. All 4 of Nardiev's UFC fights have gone the distance. Since his leave from the UFC, he's been in Brave CF. He's made a championship run in that time. He's on peak physical condition right now. Over half of his 24 wins have come via knockout, 12 of them. So I don't know why I wrote that, because half of 24 is 12. Also, he has 6 submissions to his name, 5 decision wins. His losses have been evenly split between knockout, submission, and decision. So a little bit of everything in the loss column. His opponent, Bruno Silva, the underdog, he's been in the UFC since 2021. He's beat Brad Tavares. He lost to Chris Weidman in March of 2024. I believe I watched that fight, the Chris Weidman return fight. I don't really remember that much, but it happened. He did lose to Shara, who we would talk about later on this card, Brendan Allen, who we saw UFC Paris, and Alex Pereira. So, he's had some big losses against big opponents. Overall in the UFC, he's 4-5, so not the best fighter. 20 of his 23 wins have come via knockout, 3 decision wins. He's never pulled off a submission. His losses have come almost exclusively via submission, 7 of them, that being 4 losses by decision, and he's never been KO'd. So a little bit of an iron chin with the knockouts. Submissions, he could be susceptible to that. So the picks for this fight, I think this fight definitely leans more towards Nardiev. He'll probably use takedowns and win either by submission or decision. I don't envision him knocking him out, but I do see him winning. I don't have a lot of confidence in this fight personally, but I do think Nardiev could be a nice parlay if you're trying to make a little, early parlay piece. Wake up at 8 a.m., watch these fights, have something on it. I would take Nardiev. I actually do like this fight to go the distance as well. So Nardiev money line and fight to go the distance is what I'm looking at for this one. Next up, we have a bantamweight bout between Farid Basharat, who's minus 725 on the money line. He faces off against Victor Hugo, plus 450, a pretty big underdog on the money line. So about a little bit about Farid Basharat. He's 12-0 in his career. One of the 4 fighters, I believe, bringing an undefeated record into this card. He's 4-0 within the UFC, although I did not recognize any of the fighters he has beat so far. Half of his wins have come via submission, 1 win via knockout, and 5 via decision. So his opponent, Victor Hugo, he is 2-0 in UFC-related promotions. He has almost 30 fights on his record. Wins have come via submission, which is 10 of his 25 wins. 7 knockouts, I believe, 8 decisions. So in the UFC fights, he has 1 decision win and 1 submission win. In his losses, he was knocked out twice and submitted once. So the picks here, Basharat being a minus 725 favorite. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's probably the play, but if you're putting something on minus 725, what are we doing? I think this is just an avoid situation. I just don't see him losing, so there's no worth in Hugo. I just think the odds are too high to do anything with, since he can mix in the submissions and the decision as well. I'm just not touching anything to do with the distance either. I don't know how this is going to end. I'm leaving this one for other people to bet on. I'm not touching it. Next fight, a heavyweight bout between Kennedy Nzechukwu. He is minus 155, facing off against Chris Barnett, who is plus 130. The odds on that might be completely incorrect because I'm seeing Kennedy minus 700, and now he's only minus 155 on ESPN bets. I don't know what's going on there. A little bit about Kennedy. He's been in the UFC since 2018. He's beat Ulberg, Ion Kutabala. He's also lost to Paul Craig, Dustin Jacoby, and Ovin St. Preux, who just got cut from the UFC. So, I feel like I've seen a Kennedy fight before, and it doesn't really end well for him. 8 of his 12 wins have come via knockout, 1 submission, 3 decision wins. Of his 5 losses, 2 have come via knockout, 1 submission loss, and 2 decision losses. So his opponent, Chris Barnett, he's been in the UFC since 2021, 2-2 in that time, losing to Ben Rothwell, who I don't think is very good, and Martin Boudet, who's, he got us a nice little payday in UFC, 303? But he's not great either. So really not loving what I was seeing on the resume from Chris Barnett. But 18 of his 23 wins have come via knockout. He's never submitted anybody, and he does have 5 decision wins. He has 8 losses. Of those 8, he's been knocked out 3 times and submitted once. So he is susceptible to knockout. So the picks here, I like Kennedy in this one. He's got way more experience, has beat real names in the UFC. Barnett has yet to do that. If the odds hold, he's not worth betting on at all. If you're getting it at minus 700, then that's what I was looking at before. But if it's really down to minus 155, maybe a nice little parlay piece. Barnett is definitely not worth betting on. I have no faith in that guy. He stinks in my opinion. So in terms of distance with this one, I definitely think it'll end early. This is, heavyweight. You can make these fights to end early, but I'm assuming Vegas will be keen to that as well. So I'm likely staying away. The only thing I'm considering looking at here is Kennedy by knockout. Obviously, the prop bets don't come out to the weekend, so we'll see what the odds are on that. I may do that, but for now, going to pass on this fight as well. So next fight, we have a middleweight bout between Abus Magomedov, who is minus 140 on the money line. He faces off against Bruno Ferreira, who is plus 120. I will note Abus's money line has dropped significantly. He was around like minus 120, and Bruno was pretty much even at minus 105, now up to an underdog at plus 120. What does that mean? The sharp money is coming in on Abus. So a little bit about Abus. He's been in the UFC since 2022. He's 2-2 in that time, losing to Caio Baralho and Sean Strickland, 2 very good fighters. He did win a fight in May against Warley Alves. I don't know anything about Warley Alves, but coming off that 5 months later, could be something to monitor. 14 of his 26 wins have come via knockout. 1 of 2 UFC wins came via knockout. He has 6 submission wins as well, and 6 decision wins. So of his 6 losses, he has 2 of each, 1 being by submission, or 2 being by submission, 2 being by decision, and 2 being by knockout. Strickland knocked him out. He did lose in a decision to Caio Baralho, so it did take him 3 rounds there. His opponent, Bruno Ferreira, he has 5 fights in the UFC. In that time, he is 4-1. He's beat Gregory Rodriguez, lost to Ruziboev, and 9 of his 12 wins have come via knockout, the rest via submission. Only loss was the knockout to Ruziboev. He did just recently fight in June, but that was only a one-round victory for Bruno, so something to keep an eye on there, but most likely for not, as those 4 months ago, and we saw Josh Van beat Chirez off like 10 days. No, I don't know. It was very short. So the picks here, I think this will be a pretty close fight. Ferreira may be worth a play as an underdog. Magomedov may be the actual pick, though, just because he's simply better. He's fought better competition. I think this is likely ending very early, as both have been prone to being KO'd and providing knockout power. That's all I'll probably be rolling with this one. Looking at under the rounds in this one, if it's 2.5, probably going to hammer that. If it's 1.5, then Vegas, I don't know. That seems like a little bit rich. Hopefully it's 2.5, and then we'll take that. Next fight, lightweight bout between Mateusz Rebecki. He is plus 255 on the money line. He faces off against Micah Debek Oral Bai, who is minus 330 on the money line. So a little bit about Mateusz. He has 5 fights in the UFC, 4-1 up until this point. He was knocked out in May of 2024, 5 months ago. Is that enough time to recover? I guess we'll find out on Saturday. Of his 19 wins, 9 have come via knockout, 7 have come via submission, and 3 decision wins. Of his 2 losses, which there only are 2, so he's pretty good, both being to knockout, and one was the one earlier this year. So, recently maybe got a little bit of a chin problem. We'll see. He faces off against Oral Bai, who has 2 fights in the UFC. He beat Elvis Briner by decision and Uros Medic by submission. Uros Medic is a sneaky, dangerous fighter, so pretty respectable wins there. 6 of his 13 wins have come via knockout. He has 5 via submission and 2 via decision. He only has 1 loss. That was outside of the UFC, a decision loss 4 years ago. So Oral Bai has got a pretty good resume here. So the picks here, I do like Oral Bai. In this one, he has fought a step above in competition than Rebecki. I think Rebecki is a respectable opponent, but I just think Oral Bai got this one. I think Rebecki's coming back just a tad bit too soon. I liked the 6 months thing. 5 months is close, but I don't know. I think Oral Bai can knock him out, but not necessarily sure that's what happens with true conviction. I think Oral Bai is a good parlay piece. He was minus 265 when I wrote this, now down to minus 330. I'm still going to have him in a parlay, pretty auto-locked. They can give you some boosts and odds. And I'm also looking at him by KO as a potential prop bet, depending on the odds of that. So now moving down the card, we have a welterweight bout between Jeff Neal. He's minus 290 on the money line. He faces off against RDA, a.k.a. Rafael Dos Anjos, who is plus 235 on the money line. So a little bit about Jeff Neal. He's been in the UFC since 2017. He's beat Bilal Muhammad, the champ of the welterweight division, Nico Price, who we talked about in UFC302, Mike Perry, bare knuckle boxer, Vicente Luque. Those are decent wins. His losses are Kevin Holland, Wonderboy, Magny, Shavkat, Ian Machado Gary, and he is 2-3 in his last 5 UFC fights. Jeff Neal. I put Jeff Neal in that group with Kevin Holland, Neil Magny, the people who are kind of the gatekeepers of the UFC. I think they all try and claim that they are, but I don't know. I just don't really want to bet on this at all. So 9 of Jeff Neal's 15 fights have come via knockout. He has 2 submission wins and 4 decision wins. Of his losses, he's lost by decision 3 times, submission 2 times, knockout once, and 4 of his last 6 fights have ended in decision. His opponent, RDA, very experienced, but that being said, he is 39 years old. He's been in the UFC since 2008. He's beat Cowboy Cerrone 2 times, Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, Neil Magny, Robbie Lawler, Kevin Lee, Paul Felder, Renato Moicano. He's lost to Jeremy Stevens, Khabib, Eddie Alvarez, Tony Ferguson, Colby Covington, Usman, Edwards, Chiesa, Fiziev, Vicente Luque, and Gamrot. So really a bunch of common opponents in there. He did lose to Gamrot in March of 2024, so 7 months ago. RDA, at this point, he's fought everyone. He's a respectable lad, but I don't know. I just really picking someone to win this fight, I don't know. I guess I'll just go with Neal because he's younger, fresher. Of RDA's 32 wins, 11 have come via submission. He's got 5 knockouts, 16 decision wins. Of his losses, which are 16 of them, 3 have been by knockout and 1 by submission. 12 decision losses on the resume for RDA, and he's 3-3 in his last 6 fights. So it seems like to me here on the picks, I think RDA's lost his fastball. I would go with Jeff Neal, but RDA, could just pull a knuckleball out of his ass and win this fight somehow. He's been fighting less frequently and kind of losing it to who you'd expect him to lose to. In this one, he's a big underdog again. He is a former champion, though, and dangerous, so I'm not going to bet against him. I think this fight is a strong contender to go to distance at 3 rounds, and I'd probably side with Neal, but I just don't trust enough, so we will be taking fight to go the distance, adding that to one of our parlays on that one. Moving on to our next fight, we have a light heavyweight bout between Ibo Aslan, who is minus 105 in the money line. He faces off against Rafael Cercaria, who is minus 115 on the money line. So a little bit about Ibo Aslan. This is his third fight in the UFC, being 2-0 previously. He only has one loss in his career record. All 13 of his wins have come via knockout, most being in the first round, so pretty instant finisher for Ibo. His only loss was via submission. His opponent, Rafael Cerqueira, another one where it's his first fight in the UFC, so I don't really have shit on him. He has an 11-0 record so far through other promotions. He has 8 wins via knockout, 2 submissions, and 1 decision. So very much a crapshoot in my opinion. Aslan has 2 UFC fights. Cerqueira has none. It's hard to really tell how this fight would go based off this evidence. I think Aslan has the slight advantage due to having the more UFC experience. I always back the UFC experience. I do think this ends early, but so does Vegas most likely, so I'm just completely staying away from this one. Now, I believe we are on the main card, the last 5 fights of the night. A little bit more knowledgeable about these ones. So first one, we have a middleweight bout between Shara Magomedov. He is minus 160 on the money line. He faces off against Armen Petrosyan, who is plus 135 on the money line. So a little bit about Shara, one-eyed beast. He recently joined the UFC in 2023, being 3-0 in that time. He beat Olajikic by decision in August 2024 in the other card in Abu Dhabi. So 2 months ago, over 2 months ago at this point. Wow, that's crazy. That feels like yesterday. He's also beat Bruno Silva. Of his 14 wins, 11 have come via knockout, but 2 of his 3 wins in the UFC have been by decision, so it's kind of slower in the UFC. He's never lost in his career. One of the other undefeated fighters, bringing a 14-0 record onto this fight. So his opponent, Armen Petrosyan, he's been in the UFC since 2021. He's 4-2 in his last 6 fights so far. He's beat Gregory Rodriguez, Christian Leroy Duncan, who actually recently both just fought each other. He's lost to Cal Baralho. He got submitted in February of this year, 8 months ago, so not really concerned about that, but the recent fights, we got to bring them into equation. So of Armen's 9 wins, 6 have come via knockout. The rest have come via decision. In his 3 losses, there's one of each kinds of way to lose. He lost by decision, he lost by submission, he lost by knockout. So the picks here, I think Shara is the side here. Armen is just a little bit more consistent than Shara, in my opinion. I wasn't impressed by Shara's recent performance against Mikhail Okerlejczyk. It felt like he was a little bit sluggish in that, kind of not really taking it seriously enough. Hopefully he takes this one serious. I do think he can get the job done to win in a lot of fights. I think if he just stands up and does what he does, he'll win. I do feel like they're setting him up to move up the rankings, with people they like who potentially have star power like Shara. I think you want to set them up for the best possible ascension. So being able to beat someone like Armen, add another win to the resume, I think that's setting up pretty well, pretty nicely for Shara. Also for the distance, I'm not touching anything here due to the variability. Shara is not the knockout artist he's proven to be in his previous promotion in the UFC so far with the decisions. So I'm not touching anything with the distance. I do like Shara moneyline, so we'll consider that for the DubCast official card. Moving down, another fight we have is featherweight bout between however you say it, Murphy, who is minus 270 on the money line. He faces off against Dan Ige, who's plus 220 on the money line. So a little bit about Lerone Murphy. He joined the UFC in 2019. He's beat Josh Cooley-Bao, who we covered on the channel for UFC 305, Edson Barbosa, which was in May of 2024. Half of his wins have come via knockout. He has no submissions. He has 7 decision wins. He has yet to lose in his career, another undefeated fighter. He has fought to 1 draw in his first ever UFC fight, and since then been undefeated in the UFC, obviously. So his opponent, Dan Ige, he's been in the UFC since 2017. He's beat Edson Barbosa, so a common opponent, common win for both of them there. He's beat Andre Fili. He's lost to Julio Arce, Josh Emmett, Mazvar Evloev, Bryce Mitchell, and Diego Lopes in late June 2024. We saw that on UFC 303, the late Dan Ige showing up with an hour to go before the fight, so obviously that doesn't really count. 6 of Dan's 18 wins have come via knockout. He's got 5 submissions and 7 decision wins. He's never been knocked out or submitted. All of his losses have come via decision. So the picks here, obviously mad respect to Ige for fighting at UFC 303, but I got to roll with Murphy on this one. The Sharp's already on this one, as well as Murphy's odds just keep going down and down, so take this as soon as possible. I do like this one to go the distance, though. Ige has an iron chin. We saw against Lopes, he was standing in there and firing. Seemed to really come on in the last couple rounds, too, So I don't think Ige's going to go down. I don't think Murphy's going to go down. I got Murphy money line looking at for this one, and fight to go the distance. Our third to last fight is a light heavyweight fight between Magomed Ankalaev, who is minus 425 in the money line. He faced off against Alexander Rakic, who is plus 315 in the money line. So a little bit about Ankalaev. He's been in the UFC since 2018. He's beat Marcin Prachnio, Ion Kutabala 2 times, Krylov, Odesmir, Santos, Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker. He has a draw against Jan and a no contest against Johnny Walker. He lost to Paul Craig, but that was his UFC debut 6 years ago at this point via submission. 11 of his 19 wins have come via knockout. He's never submitted anyone. He low-key has a lot of knockouts in the UFC. I was pretty surprised to see that because you hear a lot about him being a takedown artist at times. I know people are worried about him taking down Alex in a potential title bout between those two. So if Ankalaev wins this, he will be next to face Alex, most likely, in the beginning of next year. So a lot on the line for Ankalaev. If he loses, he's kind of out of that picture. His opponent, Rakic, he's been in the UFC since 2017. He's also beat Anthony Smith. He's also beat Thiago Santos. He did lose to Odesmir, common opponent, so little hint there. He lost to Jan Blachowicz, who Ankalaev was able to draw against, and he's also lost to Yuri. Respectable loss. We love Yuri. So of Rakic's 14 wins, 9 have come via knockout. He has 1 submission and 4 decision wins. He's been knocked out twice in a row, famously in UFC 300 by Yuri. I think Rakic was winning that fight. I don't know, I was pretty drunk that day, so I didn't really know what was happening. He's also been submitted once and lost 1 decision in his fight. So I think this fight is closer than the odds indicate, but I'm not confident enough to take Rakic. I think Ankalaev has to win this fight in order to keep this title shot dream alive. I respect him for taking this fight when he could probably just wait it out and get a title shot like fucking Izzy, even though Izzy lost, and I don't want to get into that. Anyways, Rakic is a bit dangerous, though, with knockout power, but Ankalaev has the same power low-key. I was very surprised by his knockout power. I think this one will definitely end early, and I like Ankalaev by knockout as well. So looking at the under in the rounds, depending on what it is, hopefully 2.5, we'll take that. And then Ankalaev by knockout, little prop bet there. Probably people think he's going to submit or win by decision. A little knockout for Ankalaev. Take people by surprise. Get ready for Alex. Hype that fight up. So that's what I'm looking at there. Now on to the last 2 fights, the main events. The co-main event is a middleweight bout between Robert Whitaker and Khamzat Chimaev. Robert Whitaker is plus 200 on the money line. Khamzat is minus 245. So a little bit about Robert Whitaker. He's been in the UFC since 2012, year 12 at this point. He's run through the mill, so let's talk about it. He's beat Brad Tavares, Uriah Hall, Derek Brunson, Yoel Romero 2 times, Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, Martin Vittori, Paulo Costa, and recently Alice Skarov. I believe that was in June. He has lost to Court McGee, which was an ugly loss, but that was a long time ago. Wonder Boy, same thing. Izzy 2 times, and Dricus. So really an impressive resume. He kind of has that resume of Izzy, like running through the middleweight division, just couldn't beat Izzy when it mattered. So that's why he's back here on another hot streak. He's ready to roll on this title shot. If there's a weird thing going on at middleweight, it looks like it's going to be Strickland versus Dricus versus Strickus for the title. It looks like Izzy's going to have to fight somebody else. He's either going to have to fight Kyle Baralho or Imavov or somebody else. He's out of the picture now. You got a free title shot from doing nothing. So if Izzy gets another title shot, hopefully it doesn't happen. Anyways, so this is really like a title elimination bout. Whoever loses this is going to be out of the picture. 11 of Robert Whitaker's 27 wins have come via knockout, 5 submissions, and 11 decision wins. When he lost, it's been a split between decisions and knockouts. He has 3 of each. 1 submission loss in 2011, which was before the UFC, and 13 years ago at this point, so I don't think that's really factoring heavily. So a little bit about Khamzat. He joined the UFC in 2020. He has wins over Li Jiangliang, Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, and Kamaru Usman. 6 of his 13 career wins have come via knockout. He has 5 submissions and only 2 decision wins. One of those was against Usman over a year ago at this point. He's never lost any fights. The last undefeated fighter on this card. 2 of his no, that's a lie. Not the last undefeated fighter on this card. 2 of his last 3 fights have gone the distance. So a little bit of a slowdown as he moves up in competition with the knockout power and stuff. So the picks here, not gonna lie, I became a UFC fan after Chimaev's crazy run in 2020, but I'm not all that impressed by his resume. I think Usman is a crazy win, but you have to factor in that Usman is on very short notice. He also had to fight up a weight class. Khamzat has been famous for not fighting and pulling out in the past year or so. He hasn't fought in over a year. He's been pulling out. He's been apparently deathly sick. He's might be banned from the U.S. I'd be surprised if Chimaev even makes it to the ring, to be honest. I still think there's a heavy chance that this fight just gets canceled. I don't know what they're going to do if that happens. He was supposed to fight in June when Whitaker beat Alaskarov, and now he's back here. So if he pulls out again, like, this is really bad. Meanwhile, Whitaker, while all this is happening, has been taking whoever, wherever, and putting in that work. He beat Costa, then beat Alaskarov, both this year. This is his 3rd fight this year, I believe. I think the odds have dropped already on Whitaker, but I do like him to pull off this fight. As for the distance, I have no clue. I don't even know if this is 5 rounds. Hopefully it's not for Whitaker's sake, but either way, I think Whitaker, Bobby Knuckles could pull off the KO here, pull off a little upset. So I'm liking Robert Whitaker moneyline plus 200. Now on to the main event of the evening. It is a featherweight title bout between Ilia Topuria, who is minus 245 in the money line, and he faces off against Max Holloway plus 200 on the money line. So a little bit of background on these guys. Obviously the last ones we kind of know what's going on, but let's talk them through. So Ilia Topuria, he joined the UFC in 2020. He's undefeated 6-0 since then. He's beat Bryce Mitchell, Josh Emmett, and Volk. He's never lost any time. So this is our last undefeated fighter on the card. 8 of his 15 wins have been via submission, 5 knockouts. Infamously knocked out Volk in February. So 7 months ago he did knock out Volk. Very impressive win there. I had Volk in that one, or I bet on Volk in that one pre-DubCast days. Didn't end well for me there. He hasn't been that active with the belt. A lot of people think he's the UFC's next villain. He's talking a lot of trash in the press conferences and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think, I'm not sure my opinion of Ilia yet. I don't know if I like him or I don't like him. Let's talk about Max Holloway. So he's been in the UFC since he was 20 in 2012. So now he is 32 in his prime. I believe that's the prime of fighting. So during that time, in the UFC, he has a huge resume, beating Andre Fili, Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, Anthony Pettis, Aldo 2 times, Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Arnold Allen, and recently Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. He's lost to Dustin Poirier twice, McGregor, and Volkanovski 3 times. So he can't get past Volk. Couldn't beat Poirier either. So kind of a really good resume. Besides, he can't beat those same people. I think Ilia's a different challenge though, and Max looked different to me in UFC 300. Anyway, I don't want to give away my picks. I still have some notes to go over. So 12 of Max's 26 wins have come via knockout. He has 2 submissions and 12 decision wins. He has never been knocked out. He has been submitted once, and 6 decision losses, half of those coming to Volk. So, a very impressive resume. I've been struggling with this one all week for the picks. The pick for me is Holloway. I got to pick Max. It's my brain doing this thing where I saw Ilia knock out Volk in UFC, I believe that was 298. I was not in the right state of mind. That doesn't really resonate to me. What resonates to me is Holloway against Gaethje, just piecing him up for 5 rounds. Obviously, then the 10 seconds at the end, pointing to the middle, let's fight. Knock him out. Craziest knockout of the year. But I just don't think Ilia, this is the hardest fight for me to pick. I want to just roll with the dogs, man. I want to roll with who I like. I love Max now. I'm a big Max fan. Listen to him on Joe Rogan's podcast. Technically, he just looks so good against Gaethje. And Ilia hasn't really, he had that one against Volk, but Volk's coming in on short notice against Chimaev 2 times. You know what I mean? It's not the same Volk. I think Volk's older now. He had the whole shtick at the press conference of being older. But Max couldn't beat Volk, so it's so confusing, this fight for me. But I'm taking Max. I'm taking the underdog. I just think there's been a lot of talk around this fight. Max, he's got to be ready for this. This is his moment to reclaim his featherweight championship. He did beat Gaethje at lightweight, so I have seen the images online of Max with the face looking a little distraught over the weight cut and things like that. He's a professional. He's been in the UFC since 2012. I'm not worried about the weight cut for Max. I think the way the media is trending for me, this is like how I view this thing, is everyone's going to bet on Ilya. Well, maybe people will bet on Max because it's Max. But I think people think Ilya is going to win, and then so you take the reverse of that. Obviously, I picked a lot of favorites in this card. There's got to be some upsets. I like Bobby Knuckles. I like Max to get it done. I don't know. Maybe I'm tweaking on that. If they meet in the middle of the octagon, like Ilya says, I just don't think that's going to happen. I do think Max stands a pretty good chance at that. I don't think that's like a coin flip who wins that if they actually point to the middle and meet there. I think this fight maybe could go the distance. I think it at least makes it to the third or fourth round, and I just trust, at the end of the day, I trust Max more. I'm not sure why Vegas likes Ilya so much. I think the fan money will come in on Max late before the card, so get Max now if you want him at the highest odds. I think that it is a bit concerning that the Vegas first line was pretty heavily favored towards Ilya, but Max has ran this division before. He has those same two opponents that he couldn't beat, Poirier and Volk. So I'm hoping Max can pull it off. With that being said, so my picks for that, I'm taking Holloway moneyline and fight to start round 3 for sure, round 4 as well, sprinkle that in. I think this is going to be a pretty good fight. I don't think it's going to end early. I think it's going to make it to the championship rounds. So now it's time to craft our official DubCast card. Before we do that, let's tell you other bets I'll be making. So, sometimes these are the ones that bail me out because my UFC DubCast card is shit sometimes. Like last time we went 1-3. Before that we were 2-2 on most of them, trying to get back in the positives. For some reason I give 4 picks on that, so I'm just going to keep doing that. So before doing that though, let's talk about my bets I'll make. So starting it off, Renat moneyline, probably put that in a parlay with Nardiev moneyline. Renat and Leal to go the distance, probably put that in a parlay with Nardiev and Silva to go the distance. So hopefully both those go the distance. Little prop bet, I like Kennedy Nzechukwu by KO. I like Magomedov and Ferreira to be under rounds 2.5. We slam 1.5. Sprinkle. Oral by knockout. Prop bet there. Rakic and Ankalaev under rounds as well. 2.5 we hammer. 1.5 we sprinkle. That's my new root saying. Ankalaev by knockout. Sprinkle. And Holloway and Topuria to start rounds 3 and 4. So now time for the official DubCast UFC 308 betting card. These are my favorite picks for the weekend. Get your picks in early, boys. This one starts early. So starting it off, we have the distance parlay. I like Jeff Neal and RDA to go the distance, and I like Lerone Murphy and Ige to go the distance. So let's pair those together, make a little distance parlay. Big favorites parlay. Oral by moneyline -300. Murphy moneyline, he's like -270. Shara, I think he's -150, so that should give you a pretty decent payout. Little prelim action there. Well, you have to wait for Murphy for the main card and Shara. But I like all 3 of those guys to win pretty easily. So we'll do that with the favorites all together. And then the 2 straight picks at the end. Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker moneyline +200. Max moneyline, same thing, +200. One of them will win. You have my word on it. Both of them may win. If I had to pick one I was more confident, I'd pick Whittaker. I think Chimaev's rusty. I don't trust Chimaev at all at this point. I do think Ilya could pull off something crazy and just become the UFC's next villain, but I do like Max overall. So that'll wrap UFC 308 in the books. This will be dropping Thursday, so stay tuned for more UFC coverage. We'll be covering UFC 309 in November. Stipe. I'm just saying. UFC 310 in December, and continuing on with all the numbered events I'll be covering on the channel. Other than that, we had movie reviews been dropping consistently now. We had The Gentleman. We had 300. Now, next up, we have Hacksaw Ridge. We have The Bourne Identity. Those are the next 2 movie reviews. We did a stream last night. The football boys were back. Cam in vacation in Nashville. Filming this before that comes out, so hopefully Mark was able to join me and Mike, but if not, we had a good show anyways, taking live viewers either on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, streaming there. Besides that, Survivor. Expect Survivor later on today or tomorrow. And new announcement, we are moving the college football show to social media. So need to get those social media numbers up. Need to start posting more on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter/X. So I will be posting my favorite picks of the weekend on that. My Flash 5, getting rid of the 5 takeaways. I'm not talking about college football a week after it happens. Everyone already knows what fucking happened. So new show update on that. And besides that, content stays flowing. We're almost at 50 subscribers, one away. Someone subscribe, please, so we can get to 50. As always, be easy. Enjoy the fights in Abu Dhabi. Early start time. Get your watches out. Get your alarm clocks. This is going to be a good card. So, peace and be easy.